watch for? What should you watch for? We talk with Brandon Kravitz from 96.9 The Game, who gives us a good look overall, puts things in perspective for us with the NFL, but also breaks down the schedules of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Miami Dolphins. We are 1 week away from the opening of Epic Universe. Give you a live look. You can see the Stardust Racers out there on this Thursday afternoon, talking about that excitement coming up in just a little bit. In our Tampa Connection today, we're going to talk about a Tampa murderer set for execution later this evening. But we begin with new details and a new timeline in the Florida State University shooting. And these details from newly filed court documents that provide new details about what happened on the campus of FSU in Tallahassee on April 17th. We now know it was 3 minutes, 3 seconds of terror from the first shot fired until it was all over. Phoenix Ikner has now been indicted. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. According to investigators, Ikner took a 12-gauge shotgun and a .45 caliber pistol with him. A witness described him pointing the shotgun, but that it malfunctioned or was not loaded, and he put that shotgun back in the car, ended up and going back for the handgun. Now, a new timeline from witnesses and video. This is as described in a true bill from the grand jury in Leon County. 11:57:24 when the first shot was fired on campus, according to this timeline that investigators were able to piece together. This was outside the student union as Ikner was seen running toward that student union through the grass. At 11:58:36 is when Tiru Chaba, the man from South Carolina, was shot outside the student union after the suspect, Ikner, walked through the student union, ran across the building, and then went out the other side. At 11:58:51, Chaba was shot again after Ikner, according to investigators, in that 15 seconds, had walked away from Chaba, then came back and shot him again while he lay on the ground. 11:59:42, so just over a minute later, is when Robert Morales was shot and killed inside the food court of the student union. And then 12 o'clock and 27 seconds is when the suspect, Phoenix Ikner, was shot and fell to the ground. According to in the grand jury report, FSU police officer Cody Popple is the one who was driving his motorcycle toward gunfire and shot Ikner in the face while he was still straddling his running motorcycle. This happened between the student union and the Moore Auditorium, and the grand jury concluded, quote, "There is no question others would have died absent his actions." So strong words for a hero officer from the Florida State University Police Department who was able to end this after 3 minutes and 3 seconds. This is video from the first appearance of Phoenix Ikner. He appeared in court Tuesday in Leon County, appeared via Zoom where he was in jail in the Wakulla County Jail. So with that first appearance, with his indictment handed up yesterday, he has been denied bond at this point, we wanted to know where things stand and what is going to happen next in this case. So earlier today on Fox 35 News Plus, we spoke with Stacey Felter, who's an attorney with Felter Law, to talk us through what to expect going forward.
It is my understanding he was indigent, so he has received a public defender. I believe the first steps will be to have what's called an Arthur hearing, a bond hearing. That because he's held on zero bond, a lot of people will ask me questions. Why isn't the bond set? In any case, don't we have a right to a bond? When it's a punishable by life, there's several crimes that do not guarantee that you have that the court will give a bond on those charges. So in this case, it was denied bond, and so the public defender will most likely do what's called a motion for bond and have what's called an Arthur hearing to show that he's not a danger, that he's got somewhere to live. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and there will be a hearing on that. The chances are probably unlikely that he will receive a bond in this case, especially due to the high profile, the high profile.
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of what factors the court would be looking at in kind of deciding that. It would be hard to kind of fathom that he would be granted a bond.
Correct. So is he a danger to society, to himself? Where is he going to live? Does he have a job? There's a whole lot of factors that go into it due to what happened and what he's accused of happening, and the allegations against him. It's going to be very difficult to be able to prove by with the court to allow him out on bond. The defense attorney will argue that it's very difficult to work on the defense, to get him evaluated, to do anything that is necessary to give him a fair shot at his defense if he is still in the county jail.
Now we know he was being held in Wakulla County, had been transferred there because of the connection kind of with the sheriff's office in Leon County. Would this be something that could prompt a change of venue at some point to another county, or would you think this is a case that would end up staying in Leon County Court, even with him being held in another county?
And that is a great question. I've had several clients where there has been a conflict on which county and county jail that my clients are held in, and they spend their time on zero bond, or if they can't produce bond, then they sit in a different county because of that conflict. Does not necessarily mean that there will be a change of venue. That's just for the conflict situation. The defense attorney will need to go ahead and make the move to have the venue changed if that's what the defense decides to do. But that does not mean that it's leaving Leon County.
A case like this that is so high profile that according to the arrest affidavit, it sounds like there is a lot of video showing many of the things that are kind of laid out in the in the affidavit, in the charges against him. It's, I would imagine, a difficult situation for a public defender to kind of find themselves in.
And I was previously a public defender in the Ninth Circuit. So it is a difficult thing, but understanding that there are things that the public defender can do, including some gag orders, making sure, because there is going to be a lot of media attention on this case. It's not just Florida. There are a lot of families around the country, maybe the world, that had students attending Florida State at the time. So it is going to have a lot of media attention, but there are some things that the public defender may be able to do to limit the exposure, to gag certain things that could be exposed to the public.
Do you expect those to be motions that we see coming from Ikner's team likely?
I would assume so. And we hate to say it, but sometimes certain crimes only have a short window. So it depends on how much attention the case gets. If it does become a problem, there's a lot of talking, it's tainting any sort of jury pool, no matter where the jurisdiction is. I would assume that they would make a motion for gag and not to have certain witnesses or other people talking about the case.
We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that, we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. Nancy, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Thanks for having me. Tonight, Glenn Rogers, he's a convicted serial killer who was convicted of killing Tampa waitress Tina Marie Cribbs in 1995, is set to be executed at 6 p.m. tonight in Stark. Now, prosecutors said that Rogers was last seen leaving a Gibsonton bar with Cribbs, who was found stabbed to death in a Tampa motel room 2 days later. Authorities tracked Rogers down to Kentucky, where he was driving Cribbs' car. He claimed that she lent him the vehicle. Now, he was convicted of killing Cribbs 2 years later in 1997 and was sentenced to death. Rogers received another death sentence in California in 1999 for the murder of Sandra Gallagher, which actually occurred a few weeks before Cribbs was killed. Now, authorities in multiple states have linked Rogers to more killings, but not all resulted in a conviction. At one point, Rogers claimed responsibility for up to 70 murders, including the 1994 killings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. But investigators said that a lot of those claims were either exaggerated or false. Now, Rogers has been dubbed the Casanova Killer because prosecutors said he had a habit of meeting women in bars, getting them into his car, and then killing them. On Wednesday, the United States Supreme Court rejected a motion filed by Rogers' attorney to stop his execution. Now, tonight, there is a protest planned in Pinellas County between 5 and 6 p.m. to protest the state's decision. The protest is being spearheaded by the group Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, which says Rogers endured years of abuse as a child, including sexual trafficking and the forced participation in child pornography, and that background of his was never shared with the jury. A member of that group, Floridians for the Alternatives to the Death Penalty, says that the governor should commute Rogers' sentence to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rogers is set to die by lethal injection tonight at 6 p.m., and this will be Florida's 5th execution so far this year. Garrett?
Meanwhile, Nancy, in Clearwater, an update on a story that has been getting a lot of attention there.
Yes, this has been one of our top stories online, and the Church of Scientology has withdrawn its request to buy a stretch of road in downtown Clearwater. Now, the church pulled its application hours ahead of a planned vote that was actually scheduled for today. The church had proposed purchasing a stretch of South Garden Avenue between Court and Franklin Streets, closing it to the public, and building an auditorium and a park. Now, critics of this plan included the grassroots group Reconnect Clearwater, which submitted a counter-proposal called Save the Garden. The organization proposed honoring African American history in the city with everyone who helped build Clearwater. Both proposals came under scrutiny at a meeting on Monday in which the Church of Scientology made a rare appearance at Clearwater City Hall. Now, the church, which owns about 200 properties in downtown Clearwater, told council members that almost 10 of the church's buildings have permits for work to be done and featured them in a video. However, this video did not talk about South Garden Avenue, and city leaders pointed that out, saying they've had more than enough time to redevelop, but several storefronts still sit vacant. In a letter to the city on Wednesday, the church did not give a specific reason for withdrawing their proposal, but Mayor Bruce Rector said that he thinks the church saw the writing on the wall after council member David Albritton said on Monday he was flipping his vote from yes to a no on the sale, which means that it would not pass. Now, Fox 13 did reach out to the Church of Scientology, but so far we have not heard back. Now, the proposed sale of South Garden Avenue is no longer on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Garrett?
I know that has been an interesting story to follow with several updates kind of in the past few days or so, and so I know it's one that has gotten folks there talking.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot of folks talking, but as we mentioned, the Church of Scientology has actually withdrawn its proposal to purchase that section of street in the city of Clearwater, so it'll be interesting to see what happens from here.
Yeah, Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Torres, is there anything you want to say to the court before we
Welcome back
proceed
into
to
Florida
sentence?
Live. We are listening in on a plea hearing and sentencing in Orange County.
Yes, Your Honor.
The suspect in the accidental shooting death of his friend about to speak ahead of his sentencing. Let's listen in.
I want to apologize to Jake's parents, Missy and Mike, for all the pain and sorrow that I've caused. I know that the pain will never go away, but I hope it will lessen over time. Many lives have been affected by my reckless behavior. I pray that one day that they can find it in their heart to forgive me in the pain, and to forgive the pain and unbearable pain that I've caused. I would like to apologize to my family for the pain I've caused them. I'm eternally sorry for Jake's family.
Anything further you want?
Anything further, sir?
I don't think so, Your Honor. Here's it.
All right, the court will accept plea agreement. I'll adjudicate the defendant guilty as to counts 1 and 2. As to count 1, I will sentence the defendant to 5 years in the Department of Corrections. What's the jail time credit? 129 days of jail time credit. As to count, followed by 2 years of supervised probation.
You need a second.
As to count 2, I'll sentence the defendant to time served, followed by 1 year of supervised probation, concurrent with the probation in count 1. This is a downward departure based upon a legitimate uncoerced plea bargain, as well as other factors. Impose for costs and costs of prosecution, which I'll render in the form of a civil judgment. You'll have 30 days to appeal this sentence. If you wish to pursue an appeal and cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Mr. That makes no sense. It's mixed. Counsel, can you approach, please?
You could hear the emotion from 17-year-old Arden Torres, who was charged as an adult with manslaughter and gun possession as a minor. He was 16 years old at the time when 18-year-old Jacob Farrell, who we heard from family, you're seeing family in the court, was shot at his home in Apopka back in December of 2023. Torres, as you heard, entered a plea agreement to plead guilty to this, sentenced to 5 years. Let's go ahead and listen in as the judge addresses him.
Cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. You are a young man, and you will still be a young man when your family welcomes you home from prison. That is an experience that Jacob's family will never have. There is nothing that we're going to do in here today that is going to fix what you've done. But what we can do is close the book on this chapter. What you've seen from Jacob's family is just a drop in an ocean of grief. And grief is is a marathon that never really ends. Now, when you go to prison, you're going to have something that most of the other people you're in with don't, and that is the family you have back there. Most people get sentenced, and there's nobody here to see them, and there's nobody here to see them off. You owe it to them, you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to Jacob and his family, perhaps most of all, to make the most of the second opportunity that you've been given here. So I encourage you each day, number one, to have Jacob's name as the first thing on your mind every day you wake up in prison. And number two, each day that you're in there, you can make choices that will either set you up to redeem yourself after you get out, or take you further down the path that you've already on. Those choices will be yours. This story is still to be written by you in a way that Jacob's story doesn't get to be finished. So I wish you the best of luck. The defendant is hereby committed to the custody of the Department of Corrections. We'll be adjourned. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't intend one administrative matter. When he is released, his family is now living in Michigan, and he just wanted to make sure the state and no one else had any objection to transferring to Michigan for supervision once he's released, assuming all the interstate commerce.
The court has no objection to transfer of supervision to Michigan.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be in recess.
A lot of emotion inside the courtroom there, including, it seemed, from the judge as he spoke to Arden Torres, that 17-year-old who has been sentenced to 5 years in prison. He does get credit for 129 days, charged as an adult with manslaughter in the death of his friend, an 18-year-old Jacob Farrell, who was shot at his home in Apopka back in December of 2023. We heard from family members talking about their loss, and in fact, Farrell's mother saying she could not hate Arden Torres because he spent so much time with them and was a friend of theirs. We also heard from the judge making the point that this teenager, when he gets out, will still be a young man with a future ahead of him, and that is something that Jacob Farrell will not get, and his family will not get. Torres being remanded into custody, spending the next 5 years in prison. We do expect to hear from the state attorney, prosecutor for Orange and Osceola counties. That's Monique Worrell, expected to speak shortly. We will try to bring that to you live when it begins as well. We are going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Governor Ron DeSantis was in Dade City earlier today for the signing, a ceremonial signing of the Florida Farm Bill, which included a number of agricultural provisions, as well as a ban on additives to water that don't add to its purity. So things like fluoride. That was a big part of the debate. In fact, before the ceremonial signing today, the governor, I think it was last week, who held another news conference talking about this bill as well. But today he was in Dade City and he signed that Florida Farm Bill. The Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson was there. Senate President Ben Albritton was there. At the end of that, Governor DeSantis also answered a number of questions from reporters there, asking about the Florida budget as well as a couple of other things.
I think it's more just the fact that there's things that are important here. I mean, I've been very passionate about the fluoride issue. I think it's important to not have forced medication. We have worked well together. I think he's somebody that is trying to do the best he can to represent his constituents, to obviously manage his caucus, and then ultimately to do what's best for Florida. And I think that's the way, it should be done. And quite frankly, that's been the way that that has traditionally been done in Florida over these years I've been here, for sure. Look, I'm very frank when I see things in the other chamber that I don't think are consistent with what the voters sent them there to do. But ultimately, this stuff all works itself out.
Hey, Governor, do you plan to sign House Bill 6017, the one involving medical malpractice allowing relatives to sue if there is a death?
No, because it would cause malpractice insurance premiums to skyrocket. The folks that we talked to universally said that. And the thing is, you can sue, right? That's a misnomer. You can sue for economic damages. What they want to do is to sue for non-economic damages. What that is going to do is that's going to lead to a flood of lawsuits against practitioners and against hospitals. Malpractice premiums are going to go up. It's going to be harder to recruit physicians into Florida, and ultimately healthcare costs will go up. What I suggested that was done, and I know there was some support of it in the Senate, is that if you had caps on the amount of damages people could seek, that would disincentivize a lot of jackpot justice. And so if you had situations, you already can do economic damages, then you would be able to do non-economic, but you would not be able to kind of hit the lottery. You would be able to potentially get within the realm. And so that, I think, is what's missing. And, we've spoken with a lot of folks in the healthcare, hospitals, physicians. It was pretty overwhelming in terms of the concern, that they had on it. If there were caps on that, then it would probably be something that people would be able to live with. But when Governor Charles signed the reforms back in the early 90s, because this undoes what Governor Charles signed back in the early 90s, we had massive malpractice insurance crisis in Florida, and we still have very high premiums for malpractice insurance. Part of it is, we've had a lot of litigation over the years. We did have caps that were put in that the old liberal Supreme Court said were not constitutional. I don't think that was the right decision, and I don't think this current court, would reach the same conclusion. But that was done because they were dealing with a crisis. And I understand, obviously, and as somebody who respects physicians, I also lived through COVID, and I understand that they get things wrong. So I'm not opposed to holding them accountable for medical malpractice. To the contrary, I think you need to do that. And I know there have been people that have been victimized, have family members, and it's a really, really sad thing. But I also know you have to look at the global view. What is it going to do for the overall access to care, prices, the willingness of physicians to come here? And that was very clear to me in speaking with folks. Yes?
Do you have a message for the family of Glenn Rogers who's being executed?
Do I have a message for the victims' families?
Yeah.
Well, the victims, part of the frustration of this, I support capital punishment because I think there are some crimes that are just so horrific, the only appropriate punishment is the death penalty. And I know there's some people that disagree with that, and that's fine, but that's my judgment. The problem, though, is that, these folks go through, and it takes forever to be able to do this. And I want to have process, and the courts don't always get it right. And if someone is wrongfully convicted, you want there to be a backstop for sure. But man, the fact that it takes so long. So I think in most of the families that I've spoken to who've lost loved ones at the hands of really brutal killers, there's just always that frustration with waiting. And it's like you never get closure. And so this can't bring their loved ones back, but I think what it can do is at least provide some closure that this whole legal enterprise has come to a conclusion. They don't have to worry about something happening down the line. But it's, when you see these things across your desk, these are brutal, brutal crimes. And I'm not suggesting that, you know, some of the crimes that don't merit the death penalty aren't brutal too, because there's a lot of stuff. But this stuff is just overwhelmingly sadistic. It shocks your conscience. And that's just not the way that a civilized society can function. So part of it is an appropriate punishment. Part of it is it expresses the outrage of the community, because if you do something less than that, then potentially you're sending a signal that, yeah, it's bad, but not as bad as it could have been. No, these are the worst of the worst. And we're very united in doing that. So we have a lot of sympathy for the families that have had to gone through these ordeals. It's not easy to lose a loved one. I mean, some of these folks, you know, had brothers, sisters, children, nieces, nephews. I mean, it's really, really bad stuff. So we're working through these cases. We take everything very seriously. It's an obligation I have as governor to oversee it. There have been times when we've had things and there were some people had questions, but anytime we go forward, you know, I'm convinced that not only was the verdict correct, but that this punishment is absolutely appropriate under the circumstances. Thanks, guys. We'll see ya.
So that was the governor earlier in Dade City talking about a number of things, including ask about that execution set for 6 o'clock tonight that we were just talking about a few minutes ago with Nancy. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back in 2 minutes. Welcome back into Florida Live, and give you a live look at Epic Universe. You can see Stardust Racers. You can see a number of other rides operating as well on this Thursday afternoon. Previews are continuing ahead of the grand opening of Epic Universe next Thursday. A lot of excitement about it, a lot of hype about it, and joining us live now to talk about it, John and Angie Bowden from the Love Our Life vlog, and we appreciate y'all joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, thank you for having us so much. Thank you.
So let's start here. Obviously, we've been talking. This is something we've been talking about for a long, long time, and now we're here less than a week away. Just kind of give me your thoughts. I mean, it's not often that we have a totally like brand new full theme park to celebrate here. I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah, it's crazy, you know. I mean, it means a lot to me. I went to Universal back in '93 with my dad, like when I was 6 years old, you know, so it's like crazy to see it come full circle. We've been covering this park for the last 3 to 4 years under the construction and talking about it and stuff. So it's like really mind blowing that we are a week away now. You know, I mean, it's just crazy to what this park is going to be and what it's going to mean for future generations 50 years from now. It's really crazy to think about.
I want to get y'all's thoughts on because I know you have had the chance to experience the park, and so I just want to give your kind of overall thoughts on what you think sets it apart.
Well, I think it's definitely different than the original parks. I think it's more of a bring your whole family type of park. I feel like it's definitely something that is unique in the way of like Celestial Park. It's its own theme park inside of a park. You know, it's five. I've heard other people describe it as five separate theme parks, and it almost is. But I do think it's set apart from the technology side of it. Everything that they're doing through like the portals, the ambience of the whole park, the music of the park, the food, which is phenomenal. It's the best theme park food I think out there right now. They're doing a lot of great things, and this park is a game changer, and it's revolutionary for sure.
Angie, what is your favorite of the different worlds?
I think Celestial Park because I like to just walk around, like take it all in. So I think that's my favorite because you get to see all the beautiful buildings and the fountain, and it's just really pretty.
John, what about you? What's your favorite?
I gotta let all of our theme park fans in on this. Dark Universe, definitely my favorite. But I would say that a very close second, surprising for me, is Isle of Berk. I didn't think I would really like that much, but I ended up loving it. I think it's just fantastic, and kids and families everywhere, they're going to be blown away by how amazing it is.
Now, we have seen in previews, it seems like Universal has kind of been working through some technical difficulties with some of these rides, a number of them kind of being down at different points. Is that something we should be concerned about as we get closer to the grand opening?
I mean, I don't think so. I was there just this last week and had lunch at the Blue Dragon restaurant, which is amazing. And I purposely went out to make a video about, is this park ready to open? And while I was there, there was not one problem, not one, no pun intended, hiccup with the entire park. Every ride was going except for Battle at the Ministry, which I have had the chance to ride. I don't think it's something that, necessarily you should be concerned about. I think that you should just know that this is a brand new theme park that's opening. There may or may not be a few hiccups along the way, but I think it's well worth the price of admission with all the things that you can do, because it's definitely not a one-day park.
Yeah, what is your advice for folks who are going to be going for the grand opening, as far as maybe some strategies for how to experience this?
Yeah, so one thing I would suggest is get there early. I've talked to some colleagues of mine, and some people are getting there as early as 4 a.m. Now, I don't know if the parking lot is opening that early, but I do know some people are going to get there that early. Also, I would suggest starting at the back of the park, hit Dark Universe or the new Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic area first, because everyone's going to go for Super Nintendo. Everyone's going to hit Isle of Berk. I think that's the better choice. And then in the afternoon, you can work your way back to Nintendo in Isle Burke.
What about you? We talked a little bit about the food, and I know you said it's some of the best theme park food that's out there. There are some items that have gotten a lot of attention. What would you say is the a must eat on day one at Epic Universe?
Okay, so I'm a pretzel guy. So the best thing that I've tried at the park is the Hunter steak pretzel. That's steak, like a knife. It's in the shape of a steak, and it's at the Burning Blade Tavern. I think it's like around $11, but it's like dipped in garlic, and they have a garlic sauce you can dip it in. That topped with the monocane mocktail, which is it's a mocktail, it's non-alcoholic. It is a great combo together. And then the other thing I would suggest as well is probably the DK Dole Whip barrel. I think that's a really good thing in Super Nintendo world. It's top notch.
What about you, Angie? What's been your favorite food item?
I can't eat the food right now.
She has a gallbladder issue.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, I'm
Tried
sorry to hear that. What about a must-see show? Maybe something that's not necessarily a ride, but that folks are definitely going to need to check out.
I've heard a lot of people talking about the Untrainable Dragon, which I really enjoyed, but I would say Le Cirque d'Arcanu is actually my favorite show out of the two. This is the new Wizarding World of Harry Potter show, and it deals with the Fantastic Beasts era of the Wizarding World. There's just unique things that they do there, and there's like a pre-show beforehand that's like its own little show. Without giving any spoilers, I would say that it has very unique dynamics to that show that make it very enjoyable and something you would want to take your family to over and over again.
What are you most looking forward to? I want answers from both of you on this. The thing you're most looking forward to once Epic has its grand opening.
You want to go first?
You go first.
Okay. I think I'm looking forward to eventually being able to have an annual pass and being able to go often, and just to say, hey, do you want to go to Epic tonight and have dinner? And that's the kind of thing, I feel like that's another vibe of the park, that it's just a walk around with your friends and enjoy the sights and sounds of the park.
And I think I'm like a people watcher, and so I really love when I see like families enjoying each other and like having such a good time, and just seeing like how they're seeing things for the first time and how excited that they are.
Well, there was certainly a lot to enjoy at Epic Universe, a lot to take in, and a lot of excitement. So I think it's going to be really cool to see that. I'm sure you'll see lots of smiles on families' faces as they kind of take all that in for the first time. So John and Angie Bowden, Love Our Life vlog. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you so much.
We are going to take a quick break here, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. Well, if you're an NFL fan, you may have been watching closely for the release of the 2025-26 schedules that were released last night at 8 o'clock. So earlier today, I talked with Brandon Kravitz from 96.9 The Game to break down what we know of the schedules for the Dolphins, the Bucks, and the Jags, and what it means for their chances for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is that the NFL has officially said Christmas is ours. Get away, NBA. We're taking it from you. And they have also designated the Chiefs as their Christmas team. I think this is now year 3 in a row where they've had the Chiefs on Christmas, and they are now doubling and tripling down on Chiefs' interests. They have more primetime games than any other team. Despite how big that Dallas Cowboys brand is, the Chiefs actually usurp them when it comes to overall primetime standalone games. They've got 7 of them, and one of them is against the Dallas Cowboys in that 4 o'clock window on Thanksgiving. So you've got not only the most primetime games throughout the course of the season, you also have the Chiefs now on 2 mega TV watching holidays in Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I don't know if they've already struck a deal with Taylor Swift and her people, but the numbers will be through the roof as if they weren't going to be already. I am predicting, and I don't think it's a hot take to say this, that Chiefs-Cowboys game on Thanksgiving Day will be the highest rated regular season game in the history of the NFL.
Wow. That is a matchup for sure. But the Christmas thing is interesting to me because that always has been, you talked about the NBA. That always has been the NBA on Christmas. It just kind of goes hand in hand. But the NFL really is starting to take that over too.
Yeah, and personally, I don't like it. The NFL owns any day that they want, and the fact that they're stomping on what I think is a sacred holiday for many, of course. But I mean, for a sports fan, that's always been an NBA day, and it still is. The NBA is not going to back away from Christmas, but even if I try and dig in on going full slate NBA, you can't avoid the fact that, hey, you flip over to Netflix and there's an NFL game. I don't like that the NFL has infiltrated this holiday. Perhaps this year it's different. Like if the Christmas lands on a Sunday, I don't expect the NFL to move for the NBA. Christmas this year lands on a Thursday, so another reason why the NFL would definitely not shy away, but it doesn't matter. Christmas could be on a Tuesday. They are going to play multiple games now, and I just wish that they had some level of grace for these other sports leagues, but that's just not the way that this business operates.
Cutthroat, Brandon.
Very.
All right, now let's talk about some of these Florida teams. The Buccaneers, they've got, 4 primetime matchups?
Yeah, so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are, let's see, I actually have the primetime breakdown here. The Bucs, yes, they're right there with the Ravens, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Packers. I'm surprised to see some of those teams only sitting there with 4. The Steelers, because of that quarterback situation, not knowing who's going to be playing that position that's so big when talking about these primetime games. I think where you look and say, okay, some of these teams we could quibble over. The Ravens have Lamar Jackson and they're perennial contenders. They should have more primetime games. Why is it that the Atlanta Falcons have 1 extra primetime game over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What makes the Falcons so much more interesting than the Bucs? So perhaps something to take a look at. I don't know what the league sees in the Falcons. And I would also spin that locally. The Miami Dolphins have 5 as well. And I don't really understand the general interest in that team. They have not been very good the last couple of years.
The Dolphins do have some challenges playing their 5 of their first 8 games on the road, so not necessarily favorable to them. They'll also be playing in Spain even.
Yeah, and you've got, on top of that, 3 divisional games in the first 4 weeks of the season, so that's tough. They have a gauntlet between weeks 9 and 11. They play the Ravens, the Bills, and the Commanders in 3 consecutive weeks, and then a fun one for the state. The Fins and the Bucks will take each other on a couple of days after Christmas on that Sunday after the Christmas holiday, so fun one for the state.
What about the Jaguars? What stands out to you about their schedule?
I think they have a chance to start hot. 2 home games in the first 3. You get the Bengals in week 2, which is a really good time to get Cincinnati because they've been historically a slow starter since Joe Burrow has taken over at the quarterback position. Big game on Monday night, week 5 against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's one of the many primetime games for Kansas City. Jacksonville has a chance to show out in that situation. And then a lot of travel is one of the things that stands out to me between week 7 and 10. You have London, then you get a bye week, then you go to Vegas, and then Houston. So they're going to be on the road quite a bit in that middle portion of the season. It's good that they took the bye. I believe, if I remember correctly, last year, they went from London straight to Jacksonville and played the very next week. I think that bye week after a London game and all of that travel is crucial, so I'm glad that they got it.
We know the Buccaneers have the 14th easiest strength of schedule. What do you think? What do you expect from the Buccaneers this year?
And usually when you win the division, you don't get that luxury. But I think what it comes down to is the divisions that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing against. Of course, they're going to play against the NFC South, so they get those 3 teams 2 times each throughout the course of the schedule. But the conference or the division in the AFC that the NFC South is playing is the AFC East. And outside of Buffalo, there's some manageable games in there between the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. The Patriots could be on the rise. The Jets are likely on a downswing, and the Miami Dolphins are about as middle of the pack as it gets. So they have an opportunity there to stack up a lot of wins between their own division and the division that they face out in the AFC. But they do have a tough stretch between week 5 and week 8. 3 of those 4 games are on the road, and the lone home game is against the San Francisco 49ers. They might not be as good, speaking of San Francisco, as they were a year ago, but that's still going to be a formidable group.
And that was just part of our conversation with Brandon Kravitz about the upcoming NFL season. We also talked with him about some things to watch for, a lot of things. So if you'd like to watch that full interview, you'll be able to find it on Fox Local in just a little bit. We are just about out of time here on Florida Live. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Been a busy day here. We've covered a lot of ground. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope you plan to join us tomorrow at 2 o'clock for another live hour of Florida Live as well. In the meantime, let's go ahead, and I'm going to give you a few seconds of this nice view of Epic Universe as it gets ready to open next week. Thanks for